Happy 59th. Seeing the man trap through fresh eyes. Today on Trekland Tuesdays Live with me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you right here from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47 and, yes, the home of Trekland Treks. Your customized away mission through Southern California. It's a day. You pick the places. I help you out. We get you escorted everywhere you need to go for a really remarkable true life experience. Living your best Star Trek, not on stages, but out in the open areas, right? And if you're watching us later on, not live, I'm so glad you are with us here. Hey, you can always comment there on YouTube in the comment section, obviously. Maybe you can join us live on a Tuesday. I know I'm coming at this time early afternoon. This time of day, we can encourage the whole world to be with us. The Europeans, East Asia, Australia, up the coast can be with us easily the next morning, I think. Anyway, I love this time of day because we can get a really worldwide sample, which is what I do unless I'm just indulging my American primetimeness. So it's great to have so many folks from around the world with us, and that means time zones that, yeah, Star Trek Day gets celebrated in a little bit of a staggered fashion, but we're basically all there together, September 8th. And yes, I know, about 10 years ago, someone realized that the Canadians, was it CTV, had Star Trek 2 days early on the 6th. So September 6th is Star Trek Day in Canada. Officially, you guys have to be different with everything. Thanksgiving, your Independence Day, it has to be your own. Okay. I'm surprised you haven't moved New Year's. But we love that. September 8th is the acknowledged start date from the NBC airing of The Man Trap. Now, look, especially in the streaming era, when things had been fallow, i.e., no real corporate budgets put to anything, and then the comeback of Discovery, one of the outflows of that was that suddenly it wasn't just an inside thing to look at the people in your fan buddy circle and go, hey, it's Star Trek Anniversary Day. Hey, happy Star Trek anniversary or happy Star Trek birthday, something like that. No, starting with the 26 or 27, 2026, 2016 or 2017 buildup for Star Trek Day on the 8th prior to Discovery's premiere. Suddenly the studio was proclaiming it was Star Trek Day. Oh, it is? Okay, it's not Star Trek's birthday, Star Trek's anniversary. It's Star Trek Day. Okay, CBS, you're throwing some money at this. So they're putting promos out there, having the new cast. Remember when there were like 47 people in the Discovery cast officially because we didn't know at the beginning that half of them were going to be killed off? They were all Georgiou's crew that weren't going to be around more than 1 or 2 episodes. Well, and no one was bothering to let you know about that until you watched the episodes yourself. Okay, fine. But that's when it really hit me that the yearly, not just the 5-year anniversaries that it took 20 years to start doing in 86 with everything going on that year, but no, we have Star Trek Day, and yay. And even now, it's been a fallow time. I've been wondering this year what's going to happen with all the chaos and the changeover at Paramount, the dwindling down, the pipeline is getting smaller for, we're not at peak Trek, all the streaming shows. Wondering what Star Trek Day would look like. We're sure not having those live and or live streaming extravaganzas that we had, ironically, during the COVID time. Nope. Star Trek Day is what we got. But we got this news. That mystery Star Trek Scouts thing premiered for the little kids, apparently to some controversy from some quarters. I haven't sorted it out yet. I'll probably wait and talk about that next week, and we'll give it some breathing time. But yes, Star Trek Scouts is a thing. It's just people stumbled across the legalities 6 months ago. And just like Prodigy, kind of spoiled it, except no one talked about it after that, and we noted it here. So just in passing. But here you go, Star Trek Scouts. Let's talk about that next week. Star Trek Con is here. And there's a lot more hubbub about it than I was figuring because there sure wasn't anything in advance. One press release for Comic-Con, one trailer, that was it. Well, now there is new life in this thing, and there it sits. on all the podcast places and on the video channels as well. Got to talk about that a little bit because yesterday was a firebomb. Star Trek Day events happening. I wound up going to the LA Times sponsored finale of season 3 screening for Strange New Worlds. So it was fun to see it on the big screen. Yes, I know the world won't get it until midnight Pacific time Thursday morning in the wee hours, basically. Most people are going to see it on Thursday sometime. It's an interesting episode, especially the way this season has meandered all over the place. And I want to think about it for a minute. Watching it on big screen was awesome. Having a panel at the end was cool too. And I got to, if you haven't seen them, I got to video, I got to live stream, I got to snap, make some social posts on my Instagram. I hope you subscribe. And yes, on YouTube, we did a live now at a location site near the Culver City Theater where we were last night for that event. So it was a crazy day. And then I had lunch with the great Aaron Walke, not to get too much into my social calendar, but caught up with his life and his project, Wings of Fire, that he's doing, which sounds like it's potentially going to be huge since the Prodigy boat is still out there and could be for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. But apparently that's the way animation works. We learned so much in the modern era. I'm a little bubbly here because it's been a Star Trek day like no other. And look, I hope everybody around the country, around the world, got to do a Star Trek day. Did you have a Star Trek party? Did you have a Star Trek Day party, a get-together? Did you watch some screenings with friends? Folks were doing things over the weekend, much less on the Monday. It's kind of the silent international global holiday, don't you think? I think a lot more people were celebrating Star Trek Day, or at least acknowledging it, than, I don't know, the mainstream media wants to admit. One thing I did over the weekend was, and it was long overdue, and it's where I'm coming from this today, what our title is about. Because look, over the years, since we've been ramping up the celebration, the marking of September 8th, 1966, and September 8th, you can use that as a birthday for the whole franchise. There's times when I worry, I get concerned that we only focus on the original series and we don't think about September 8th, 66 as a birthday for the whole franchise. And again, 2 things. One, The Cage was shot in December 64. I know. If you want to party early on the big ones, like you could have started your 60th a year ago and just partied all the way through for 2 years. But, officially, okay. There's that. But then again, all the other series, they have we mark the anniversaries of the beginnings of Next Gen onward. The animated series, of course, also started on September 8th, just by happenstance, being the Saturday that it started. 7 years later, but okay. Only 7 years later, gang. Most of the time, though, all the other series, the movies had premiere dates. The series, we talk about the finales of series. It's the middles of the series that I wish somehow got a little extra attention. That's why on Trek Files this year, we were thrilled to do a, what was it, the 35th anniversary? Yes, the 35th anniversary of Best of Both Worlds Summer with Jonathan. If you haven't seen that one on the Trek Files, go back and catch it. And then this year was the 60th anniversary, not next year, but this year is the 60th anniversary of the second pilot, Where No Man's Gone Before. And that's why it was awesome. If you haven't heard it this week, we came back for season 14 on the Trek Files with none other than, who was a witness to seeing Where No Man's Gone Before that we can still talk to and reach out to? Yeah, the great Uncle George himself, George Takei, is my guest on the Trek Files this week. I hope you give it a listen. We talked about his memories of the first day of shooting Sulu. He had 2 scenes. He had about 3 or 4 lines in the whole episode. It was a pilot, but he had much promise to come, Gene had promised. And we talk about that on the Trek Files this week. So I'm going to go ahead and plug Trek Files. Season 14's wonderful opener. We tie into Where No Man. Its 60th anniversary already, but in this general hoopla of Star Trek Day. The other thing about Star Trek Day the recent years, whether we're having a party in a bar, whatever it is, people are having a home party. What does everybody want to do? They want to recreate that night. They want to recreate Thursday night, September 8th, 1966. And what do you do with that? Of course, you haul out the Man Trap and show it. Yes, it is the Man Trap, not just Man Trap. There's so many V titles. It even beats Next Gen Season 3. And, after years and years and years of this, I get a little burned. I get a little shaded. I go, oh, God, are we really going to mark the anniversary of the original series? Are we really going to mark its birth? Are we really going to even metaphorically mark the birth of the whole franchise? Are we really going to watch the Man Trap once again? So I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't watched the Man Trap in years. If someone says, hey, we're going to have a Star Trek Day party or a screening or an event, and we're going to watch the Man Trap, I go, okay, yay for that. And then I don't go. I don't watch. Well, this weekend, my old friends, and I can say that, my longtime friends, the oldest club, Star Trek club here that's still existing in Los Angeles, the USS Angeles. Yes, it's an old original Starfleet chapter. Dave Mason and Lisa and all that gang, all the folks over the years that I've known. I said I've been promising to go talk at one of their meetings or lead a discussion or something, and I finally did. They had it on Saturday, not Monday. And I said, so, Dave, what are you doing? And he says, well, we thought we'd watch the Man Trap. And I was like, okay, but it's not my con, monkey boy. I said, that's fine. That's wonderful. And then I thought, here's a challenge. Why, instead of coming up with some blowhard talk, or much less a slide presentation or something, screen shares about the franchise and the original series, and so, why not just make this simple? Why not? Okay, we'll watch Man Trap, but let's do something else. Let's get our minds in the mindset of somebody who was actually lucky enough, somebody who was a sci-fi person in 1966, which was a decided slice of the minorities, who actually was excited to watch this, or who was just hanging around flipping channels. It was NBC's early premiere week for the new fall shows, back when that was a thing, and driving TV watching media. And people were starting to barely buy color TVs because they were getting quasi-affordable, unless you were just way up there in the bucks. Let's put ourselves back in that mindset about the world and also about Star Trek, which is to say, there was no Star Trek. So I asked everyone there, I said, okay, just imagine you're going to watch this show. You've heard a little bit about it. There's some handsome guy and there's some guy with ears and they're in space. If you've heard anything about it at all, that's about all you got. If you were paying attention and watched some of the early, maybe you caught an interview in a paper, but more than likely, all you knew was what was in TV Guide that week, the little launch ad, right? And the blurb. I don't think there'd even been any review. If you were a review reader and you were looking around at your newspapers, even something to get in, because magazines, unless it was TV Guide or such, were on too long a deadline. Maybe the weeklies, but what weekly is there's no Entertainment Weekly. There's nothing. I mean, you had TV Guide, and then you had your local newsprint newspaper edition, the TV insert, right? So you were pretty much flying blind, unless you were a sci-fi nerd who was in the slow motion, hot telegram at the time, your club newsletter, or somehow you'd gotten yourself to Worldcon, you'd been at TriCon in Cleveland, and you'd watched Where No Man's Gone before. And I can't remember if they showed the Man Trap or if he showed The Cage as his second one. But if you were lucky enough to see and hear Gene that weekend in Cleveland, one of just a few hundred people, okay, you knew what was coming. But most of the world did not. Most of the world, of course, had no idea, not just about Star Trek, but about fandom. You had no idea that Star Trek was going to be the spark that got Star Wars made. And then we're off to the races and running with pop culture, right? Everything to come. Everybody coming out of the closet, having having more nerd babies in the closet before you even came out. And having everything to the fact that everybody else grew so big that Star Trek got squeezed, went away, got fallow, and has come back and now gotten relevant again. And leading media like the Fifth Network and leading streamers. CBS All Access is one of the first home content creators, the first. Head of ABC, head of Peacock and NBC. Don't forget. Before all that, it was just people sitting down that night. And what did they see? We did this, I said, guys, we'll just throw some. Everybody has seen The Man Trap a million times. We're not spoiling and we're not interrupting anything. And I had a revelation. We sat down to watch this, and my head started clicking as well. What will we say here that you haven't, or even you hadn't seen as a million times sitting through before, with this specific viewpoint, looking at The Man Trap through fresh eyes. And I don't just mean 1965 eyes, I mean 2025 eyes. And I had a couple of amazing moments. Look, first of all, what is the first thing that people see, right? Ding, you have the station identification, you get your NBC, the Peacock. The following program is presented in living color on NBC. The Peacock. Very first thing you see, no fanfare, you see the teaser. That's what we call the cold open, the teaser, because it teases you to keep watching and not turn the channel. Teaser in 5 acts. The very first image you see is this. Yeah, we know it's iconic, but that is the first thing. Sitting there on that night in early September, right after Labor Day in 1966, and that is the first piece of Star Trek anyone on this earth, outside Desilu and its vendors and NBC, first piece of anything Star Trek people had seen. And notice, it's some of the new footage. Balls are on the nacelles. Luckily, they didn't start off confusing people right out of the gate with the slits, right? Okay, so we got the very best image going on. And you have a flyby. Now we know. It's how all Star Trek starts. But the very first thing people saw was this. Is that a spaceship? Is that a planet? It's not Earth. What is going on? I guess this is sci-fi if I didn't already know. And then here's what blew me away, gang. This is what blew me away. The very first shot we saw inside that starship, inside that spaceship, was this. You ready? Boom. Look at that. In 1965 eyes, you're saying, whoa, there's a black woman down there at the front next to that white guy. Maybe you're thinking this. And then you're like, wait, is that like a Satan guy back there in that chair? What is going on here? Well, very quickly, we're into conversation. We're into dialogue. We're into the Satan guy talking to somebody in a gold shirt on a planet, at least remotely. That's what your 1965 eyes are telling you. Your 2025 eyes are saying, whoa, wait a minute. The first time anyone ever saw Spock, he was in command. But he had the con. But more than that, the first time anyone saw Uhura, she was at the helm. Not an emergency, not a crisis. Navigation, excuse me. She's at the helm console. She's sitting at navigator's chair. I know. Pre-ops manager. The first time we see Uhura, she's down front, filling in at navigation. Now, here's the age-old thing about the early original series. Remember, 2 pilots, right? The cage, not usable. It doesn't even have our lead. Second pilot, well, the costumes are a little different. Some of the sets are a little off, but it's usable. We at least have Kirk in command, right? And then some more juggling. We get Nichelle as Uhura. We get Dee as McCoy. And then second season, we get Walter as Chekhov. But in that moment, in that pilot, oh, we get a second chance pilot. Okay, oh, we're in production. Now we got to put something to paper. We got to do it. We got to do it on budget. We got to deliver. All the famous banes of the original series on analog film, optical effects with a printer, that the more layers you put into your visual effects, the fuzzier everything was going to be. I mean, all of the aches and pains of getting the original series produced against the odds, against a lot of people who didn't care, people who thought it was too expensive and scary, both the makers and the distributors, and then the people that just don't get it. You read the making of Star Trek, you get it. But here's the thing. Remember, the Man Trap was a special selection. They could have showed the first pilot, but then that would have thrown people off. The uniforms are different, and Uhura's not in it, and Dee's not in it. So the network looks at this and says, what are we going to show for our first episode? Because by then, they wanted to get ahead and have things in the can to not get behind. Spoiler alert, they got behind anyway, getting episodes finished. Famously, Bob Justman standing on Gene's desk for rewrites. Famously, Daryl Anderson having a breakdown at Anderson Effects before they decide they need to use everybody in Hollywood for their visual effects, even though they may not be obviously up to standards now as far as quantity. So Bob Justman and his library effects. Here's the thing to remember. That shot we just saw, yeah, Uhura's in her red. Remember, she has 2 episodes in gold. You had 2 pilots. The Man Trap was the 4th show filmed after the pilots. That's why the Man Trap is technically episodes produced number 6. What was filmed first? The first show they sat down to make after the 2 pilots as production to learn from, Corbomite Maneuver. Okay, but it has a billion visual effects. They realized, but they were learning as they went. Corbomite Maneuver was shot first after the pilots. It was the 10th shown, put on air. And by that time, the things that, Uhura was in her gold and Spock's collar was weird. And we all know all that. They were still getting the bugs out. But they had to hold up that many slots because it wasn't in contention for what are we going to show first. What was the next show filmed? What was show number 2 actually filmed? Mud's Women. Do you really want to put... They weren't space hookers. They were settler wives. Just like Here Come the Brides. Just like real life. It was more than 3. It was like a whole boatload. Wives for the lumberjacks in Seattle coming around the horn in the 1840s from Boston. Real history, quasi-commemorated with the 2-season Here Come the Brides, where half the cast, including Mark Leonard, were Star Trek crossovers. And, of course, the inspiration for that pro-novel Ishmael, which was meant to be a cute fan novel, got sold to Pro to Pocket, and then Screen Gems yelled because it was obviously an homage to their property, which was in reruns by that time, obviously 20 years later, but still caused a ruckus, and Paramount was caught flat-footed in licensing because nobody realized the obvious crossover, because nobody in that department at that time corporately was fun. Mud's Women was not going to be the first show of Star Trek to be aired, to be unleashed on the public. What was aired next? The Enemy Within. Do you really want to unleash splitting one of your characters into a good and bad half before they've had a chance to meet the character in their normal state? No. So of the first 6 episodes, 1 was an unusable pilot. 1 was a pilot they'd rather hold on to because it was a lot of differences. 1 was the Space Wives. 1 was a character split in half. So the Man Trap became the de facto first episode. That's what they decided. What was shot after the Man Trap? The Naked Time. Yeah, that wound up being 4th. Charlie X was the 8th show filmed. It wound up being the 2nd one aired. So now we're off and running to the races. This is why over the years, Bijo's Concordance used the aired order. It's the impact that the shows had on people in their memories, because almost everybody in the audience then in fandom in the 70s, or a chunk of them, had watched from the beginning. The numbers were there. That's why Star Trek, even as the years have gone by, and yeah, the folks who watched week to week in the 60s have passed on. They've always kept it very intact to what was aired and what was produced, because we do want to know, Uhura didn't randomly decide to wear a gold uniform one week. 10 weeks into the show, those are the first two out of the gate produced. Spock's collar did settle down. So did his stripe spacing. So did McCoy. I mean, so much is revealed when you know to watch in production order. But to watch it in the aired order gets back to what I'm talking about here. What was the impact on the folks watching live in those days? And to watch it in 2025 eyes and realize the first time that audience saw Uhura, she was down front, right? So it's not just that. Keep watching. I mean, we all know that famous line, right? Miss Uhura, Vulcan has no moon. Why did that even? Oh, canon, Vulcan doesn't have a moon. Well, then what is that? Oh, it says double planet. Okay, we're off and running with a canon fix. Why were they talking about Vulcan's moon? Because Uhura set him up, right? Mr. Spock, what would you say? She's talking about being frustrated about hearing that word hailing frequency. Well, it is said about 18 times in the Corbomite maneuver. In their world, in the reality, the meta of filming the show, Nichelle had said hailing frequency open a billion times. It was a meta joke. She's already talked about it. Can I please do something besides sit back here with a thing in my ear and talk about hailing frequencies? It had already happened. This was the fourth 1 hour. They'd already built it into the show. But it was cool. Spock can say, well, I find that illogical that a communications officer would, go daft. That's not her word. Over the word frequency. And then she says, well, all I want, she tries to be a young woman. All I want to do is just know, what's it like to, on a romantic moonlit night on Vulcan? And he says, Vulcan has no moon. And she says, look, Mr. Spock, I know your people aren't big on emotion. Now, look, aside from the fact that after my stomach initially turned flip-flops watching my first screening of JJ Star Trek 09 and watching this alternate dimension, alternate timeline universe where Spock and Uhura are dating and trying to get past the fact that it feels like, the brother kissing his sister for 99% of the world going, but then remembering that there were those touches, there were moments when you wondered if something could have clicked. In another reality, I could have called you my girlfriend. But what that does is, looked at from a different direction, as we're meeting these characters for the first time, that opening scene with Nichelle with Uhura at the helm, at Navigators, it's all in service to the plot. And she has no lines. She's just there as a visual presence. It's all about Spock talking to Kirk. So we don't know about Vulcans yet, much less Spock. The first person that we see introduce the audience, the first person who sets up Spock to tell the audience about Vulcans. And our first hint at this whole logic, no emotion, the whole mantra of Vulcans. Uhura is the one that sets that up. Now, did they know this? Oh, now it's time. It's the fourth episode. We're going to set this. No, it's come up before. But the reality is, for people watching that night, it may not have been planned. It's just the way it fell to those making the decision with 6 in the can, 4 usable, 5 usable, 1 not usable, and that pilot soon to be cut into the 2-parter to save them some time, right? But it just taught me. It's like, look at what our 2025 eyes are doing, watching. Yes, it is worth a fresh look. It is worth it. Uhura kicked this conversation into high gear. Not in show 1. The first scene in Where No Man, Kirk does it at the chess game, right? But we're not going to get Where No Man's Gone Before for 2 more weeks. And by that time, we get it. We wonder why Spock is suddenly smiling here. And yeah, a couple of times kind of queasy, and a couple of other early episodes before that got, right? But that's not what America or Canada saw. They learned it because of Uhura. Now look, this is why we can't just erase the original airing from our consciousness, even as those folks age. And it has an impact, right? And we have to keep this straight so that as we look at, if you really want to get in the weeds and look at how the show blew up and in what order and what people at the time wrote, what did the formal critics write? What were some of the letter that we had? This is later in the season. We were blessed to have in the Trek files at the Roddenberry Archives, blessed to have a letter from a woman, a young woman, married mother, who watched This Side of Paradise, Spock and the Spores. She watched it that night, wrote a letter that night, stamped it, right? We're talking paper and stamp days. Mailed it the next day. It got to Desilu in the mailbag and got to Gene's office, a week later? But she was raving in a very refined way about what an incredible episode that was. And of course, it's This Side of Paradise. It's Spock and the Spores. It's late. It's a classic early episode, directed by Ralph Sininsky, by the way, written by Dorothy Fontana, rewritten. And it's part of that, real time, not instantaneous twitting, not emailing, not posting on your boards and socials. The pace of the world then, but that was lightning fast. And that's what was happening over and over and over and over again, people being sucked in that first night. But what was the order that did it? What was the order that caused it, right? Now, look, there's all kinds of little things. Keep watching this. Your tired 30, 40, 50 years later eyes, you might be amazed at what you see here. I mean, some of these things we caught years ago. Like, I love McCoy using a wooden tongue depressor. Yeah, little things like it's a second opinion if you watch my second opinions. Yeah, that guy in the engineering radiation suit with the stenciled numbers who winds up dead. There is a little bit of 60s leering, I'll say. There's a little bit of that with Janice, right? The couple of males after she walks by in the hall. Although I will say, on the other hand, compare that moment to what was, I don't know, on almost anything else you'd see on TV that way, especially network drama. I don't know, 77 Sunset Strip, whatever the hell was on, you would have had a lot more leering and good old-fashioned male chauvinism on anything else on TV. It was restrained there. But here you get Rand's biggest scene ever, aside from Miri, and aside from The Enemy Within. This is kind of her biggest sustained. This is what, remember, Janice Rand was number 3 on the call sheets. Remember all the early promotional pictures? It was Kirk, Spock, and Rand to be the big 3 lead. And then you watch the early title cards, the way they did guest stars in the day. And it's Rand and McCoy, the first 2 out of the gate being billed, which unfortunately, sadly, tragically went the way that did. And this may be the biggest scene ever for Sulu away from the helm. He's actually off in another lab. It's the famous Beauregard hand puppet scene. And watching the Gorn animatronic on the terrarium on Strange New Worlds, I just, it made me appreciate how far we've come since the hand puppet Beauregard. And yet, I mean, you'd expect that. It's only been 60 years. But how effective it was back then. And when you first watched it, did it linger on that thing long enough to figure out that it was really a guy in a hand with all of what they did to it? Anyway, but you're getting Sulu away from the helm as a rounded character. Sadly, that trope would go away, and he'd almost never, at least Uhura gets to talk about how often do I get shore leave. Of course, George took a vacation second season to go to the Green Berets. So he lost out on some scenes. He lost out on the Trouble with Tribbles scene going with her. But look, overall, maybe until that, which survives 3rd season. I am for you, Sulu. Maybe until then. He has a bit with the space hippies. He has the bit during the court-martial and Turnabout Intruder. I know. I mean, overall, if you think about the pivotal character here is a monster. They love to talk about, it's the monsters of Star Trek. Well, of course, monsters, a Horta was a monster until you found out it was just another. That was Star Trek's bit, was bending over backwards. Why does everything we don't understand have to be called a thing? Later on from McCoy. But overall, this has a very, for the time, a very Twilight Zone, a very Outer Limitsy, right? It is the monster. It is the metaphor, though, also. There's not so much a surprise twist here, because the reveal is 2/3 of the way through. that it's Crater, and it's not really her, Mrs. Crater, Nancy Crater. It's a shapeshifter. The word shapeshifter is never uttered, though. Do you notice this? We're not quite the sci-fi savvy audience yet, the mass audience. They have to explain it, right? But it does have that kind of, even the metaphor of the passenger pigeon, the buffalo, the last of its kind, is ladled on a little thick, but to get the point across, because that's where people's, I think, understanding were. I remember one person also, one of the early reviews said that it was so sad that just, half a season later, it's too bad the salt vampire didn't come along a little later, because apparently by Horta time, we do have the understanding not to just, the salt vampire was killing, and it was apparently sentient because it could process and mock whatever it got to. Too bad the salt vampire didn't fare as well as the Horta, which could have been wiped out eventually. Then those babies would have hatched. How do Horta babies survive without the mother? That would have been interesting. So the other thing that's funny about this is, if you're watching with your 2025 eyes, you keep watching the extras, right? Even if they have a line. Green, Darnell, all of them. Nobody's in red. In fact, there's no red shirts in. They're dying. It's the blues and the golds. Why poor science folks and even command guys get stuck on this away mission, landing party. There are no red shirts in this for half of the episode. And then you see some in the corridor. You see some busy. You see a technician. But there's no red shirts with speaking lines, really. There's no Scotty here. Now look, Jimmy Doohan is still under a 13 of 26. He's still under a part-time contract. He's not a regular at all. Now, he's in Corbomite Maneuver. He just doesn't happen to be in this one that gets picked to be the debut. In fact, Jimmy is not in Charlie X either, the second episode to air. If you think about it, you know what the third episode to air was. The audience third experience with Star Trek was the second pilot. That means also that the first time the audience saw Scotty, he was in good old Ops Tan or Ops Sand, whatever that was, right? Where no man, the Ops division is in tan, which was hard to see on old TVs. Now, if you have a bright, shiny spark, you can see the difference between that gold and the tan. It does kind of look like night and day. For years on black and white, much less old color, and faded prints in syndication, there was no, for a while, I thought that there were only two colors in the second pilot. Yeah. It's not until the fourth episode that people got Scotty in red. And that was Naked Time. And Scotty's all over the place in Naked Time because, you can't mix antimatter gold. Matter and antimatter gold. You cannot do it, Captain. So, sometimes, gang, it's worth not assuming, not only not assuming you're not going to remember something from a show, but this is what I say all the time. We can't help but watch something in our youth, watch something 10 years ago, watch something before 9/11, watch something before an economic crash, watch something before a pandemic, watch something before a tyrant takes over, and go back and see the thing you know in your head. You've got it cemented in your brain. It's etched in your memory. Go back and watch it again with the fresh eyes. And I know it was just a couple of moments there. But I fell off my chair that opening 5 seconds seeing Uhura down at the helm. So all this time about seeing Uhura on Strange New bopping around to different stations. Well, sure, you remember when she jumped up to take the helm in Naked Time. But think about this. By the time people saw her do that in Naked Time, in the original airing, they had seen her sitting down there down front. First chance, the first shot of the bridge that viewers ever got was Uhura sitting at navigation. It's amazing. Never say never. Never say never, never. This franchise, these episodes, these series, all the way up through the latest ones. This is why Star Trek in the rewatch is so ubiquitous. But sometimes it's more than, oh, I'm going to rewatch Lower Decks. I'm going to rewatch Strange New. Rewatching the original series. And again, not just for like the internal continuity of Trek, which is in your face and you can't help it, but just think culturally what this meant in the time. And I know the interracial kiss, the same gender kiss of the Daxes, whatever it is, there's more than that even. And sometimes it's subtle. And is if you dive into anything that's earlier than today, it's just fun. It's just fun. Anyway, I that all came to me. I walked away thinking, wow, I could have rolled my eyes and said, oh, the man trap for the millionth time. And then I see Nichelle sitting there, not just sitting there, but realizing that's how the American TV audience and anyone watching these in the order that NBC sent them out in to other countries when they finally started airing in the UK and Germany and Australia and around the world. Canada was the only near simultaneous release, right? It was at least a few years before they got to other countries. But to see that and realize that, and let us celebrate Nichelle and George, and yes, Grace Lee and Dee. Watching Dee be McCoy, that was Dee's introduction and McCoy's introduction to the world. Watching him be a little lovelorn for his young self, and Kirk almost acting fatherly to him, or at least buddy. Anyway, that is amazing, folks. I can't wait to dive in and see what I've stirred up here. That's going to do it for our topic today. Look, if you're watching us later, so much is happening in Star Trek right now. So hope you had a happy Star Trek Day 2025. Did any of this stir up anything for you? I would love for you to keep the conversation going. Leave a comment in the comments in the thread here if you would like to. Please do. And join us maybe someday on a Tuesday if you have a chance. You can even bop in as many do. Keep the sound down. Turn on your closed captions and watch what's going on as the day goes by. And of course, you can join us at anything at LarryNemecek.com, any of the other podcasts, our experiences, and all of that, right? Just to say, though, as we do that, I cannot get away again without giving a shout out to our newest crop. Yay! Our newest crop of Patreon folk. So here's where I get to say thank you. Thank you, TTLers, Chuck A. and James Kerwin, Diana Hopkins, Halbert Gunnjonson, Lawrence Todd, Chris Jiggins, Mitch Keith, and Keith Rombach. I just realized I had them back to back. That's funny. Josh Patton, Pranakasha Productions, Comedy Forecast, and yes, our live wires. Yay. J.R. Pull, Gary Williams, Robert McLean, Byron Bailey, Donna S. Runyon. Good to have you back, Donna. Brandon Coles, Dave Gregory, Jesse at Crusher Convo, of course, Chris Garris, and Casey Shafsky. Gang, I appreciate that. It ebbs and flows, but it's fun to have a bunch. I keep it very simple, $5, $10. It's the shout out, and it's access to the early years of Portal 47 Backstage Creatives interviews, patreon.com/Trekland Live. I need to catch those up. We made a good start. Some didn't get them. We'll get on it. I promise you. Thanks so much. And as I mentioned, yay! Season 14, can you believe it, for the Trek Files is now up. TheTrekFiles.com is our home at Memory Alpha, where you can get everything together, the podcast audio player and a document of the week, and all the hot links back into Memory Alpha. This week, with our great guest to kick off the season, and it just happens to be Star Trek week, and it happens to be the 35th anniversary year for Where No Man's Gone Before the Second Pilot. Yes, none other than George Takei is the guest. It's a slightly longer edition, of course. Who wouldn't want it to be? Hope you can take it. I think it's a little over a half hour, so you want to check in on that. It's just great to talk to George and check in with him, knowing he's blowing and going and hanging in there and still representing all the ways, and still proud to do his live long and prosper. Oh, yes. Oh, my. We got a good laugh out of George at one point, so that's in there, too. It wouldn't be a George visit without one. So All the podcasts from Roddenberry there, podcast.roddenberry.com. You can get us at any podcast place of choice like iTunes, all of those. But just remember, we do now have a live meetup for the Trekophile, spelled with an F, every other Monday on Discord, on the Roddenberry Mission Log Discord. If you join their Discord Patreon for $1 a month, you got access to Trekophiles Tonight every other Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific. But also all of the community, all of the podcasts have a mob. A lot of them have a live show, talk back, and there are other live fans that put together all kinds of other genres, other franchises, and just some fun stuff. There's a huge community at the Mission Log Discord. You should check it out. So it's pretty humble, right? I mean, $5 for Trekland, $1 for Roddenberry. I hope that wouldn't put anybody else out. And again, once more, it's a great time of year. I'm working on some special group tours right now, but you can always come on your own, as a single, as a couple, as a family, for TreklandTreks.com. We will set you up with a wonderful, memorable, unique, custom away mission, 4 stops, a quick lunch, 6 hours around SoCal, something that makes sense. I've helped you pre-plan it, and then I'm leading you, and I'm wrangling your cosplay and your action figures and whatever else is part of the day. Check it out, TreklandTreks.com, or you can come to my page and find it too. Otherwise, gang, if you're leaving us now, it's Larry Nemecek on the Blue Sky. Larry Nemecek still on the Twitter X. It's Larry's Trekland. Yeah, on Instagram. We put some lives out yesterday, if you didn't catch it. And on Facebook, sure. And YouTube, please like and subscribe us there. Portal47.net, your backstage insider's guide for more in-depth Trek all year long. There are no post-con blues with Portal 47. Check that out too, would you please? We have a great community, and also, well, you can't see the sign, but we've done 10 years nearly of this monthly package. We're coming up on the 10th anniversary. We have the logo ready, I think, to unspool. I'm just confirming the guest for our open house this year. It'll be next month. Date to be arranged, TBA'd. As usual, it'll be open. It'll be a free night. We'll give you samples we'll have a sample Ask Dr. Trek roundtable, and we'll have a sample hour, at least, with a guest, a high-profile guest that you'll love to talk with. Come in the chat, and a few people maybe even get a chance to ask a question after I'm done. Anyway, put that on your radar. The 10th anniversary Portal 47 open house is coming next month. Guest will be announced shortly. The world moves on, gang. The world moves on. So thank you once again for joining me this time. If you're watching us later, check it out next week. Check out the past catalog, and maybe you can catch us live sometime. All right. I'm going to close it out for you folks. Just saying. Stay healthy. Do all the things. Janet had a croupy virus that kept her at her. It finally tailed off after about 2 weeks. There's all kinds of stuff going on. You don't have to have a pandemic to take care of yourself and be at your best. And let's just hope nobody unleashes a pandemic on us, right? Which brings me to the question, please, please, please stay awoke. Check the sources, all right? And trek well, everybody.